At 5, yeah.
I raised 3 boys by myself. There's nothing Jonathan Dunwood could ever say that I haven't already. Vito, you got 2 now, right?
What?
Kids.
One and another one next month.
Oh, the other one hasn't arrived. Oh, I'm sorry.
We are live now, so I do my countdown and we go in. Right. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the WP-Tonic this week in WordPress and Tech. It's episode 718. Got an interesting panel, a powerful panel, a panel that might grow during the show. Who knows? We'll see. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. We've got some great guests. I'm going to let our special guest and a friend of the show, Brian. Brian, would you like to introduce yourself quickly to the tribe?
Sure. I'm Brian Cords. I'm a WordPress developer, agency work for the last decade or so, and recently have been writing a little bit about the WordPress news on Master WP, which is probably where you've seen me. Yeah, that's the kind of quick bio.
Man, you've been upsetting the boss, haven't you? You know what have you been up to, Brian?
Yeah, my DMs are getting a little aggressive, so
getting a bit fruity, aren't they? Got a real friend of the show, a semi-regular. Got Vito in the house. Vito, would you like to introduce yourself to the tribe?
Sure. My name is Vito. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Adarim.io, where we help agencies, freelancers, and digital teams to collaborate visually with their clients and systemize their workflows.
Right. I got my friend John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself to the tribe? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, John.
John from Lockdown SEO. Part of the game.
Part of the game. And I've got my friend, a mentor, an observer. He enjoys pointing out my weaknesses, which are endless, tribe. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself to the tribe?
Of course. It's Spence from WPLaunchify.com.
There we go. And as Spencer pointed out, we have not got any females. I have tried, but I have failed, tribe. We'll get many next week. I'll rustle up a few. So let's go straight in. Oh, before that, I almost forgot the most important part of the show. We've got to go listen to a couple of my major sponsors. Shock horror, got to do that. Be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I'd like to point out I've got some great offers from our sponsors, got some great reviews of plugins, services aimed at WordPress and SaaS entrepreneurs. You can get all these goodies, tried by going to WP-Tonic/recommendations, and it's all there for you. So, beloved panel, let's go straight into it. I'm tempted just to drop story one and just find out what Brian's been up to, but we'll probably throw that into the mix. So let's start off. New 2023 default theme now in development. So, Uncle Spence, I think they've been listening to some of your input. Looks like you were going on that we needed a more of a blank slate type of theme for WordPress and the Gutenberg sunshine. So what do you think of this tentative step in listening to your wise words, Spence?
It's a sort of interesting step in the right direction, but on a different path. So my suggestion was, oh, there's Daniel. Hi, Daniel. The thing I suggested was a canvas theme. This has the auspices of maybe being a canvas theme, but what they seem to be talking about is more of let's throw every janky thing under the sun in as choices, and you'll just pick them amongst the various choices, but they're really style choices. They're not a canvas. A canvas theme to me is like a magnetic whiteboard that you literally hang stuff on. Now, Brian and Master WP Crowd, they have, Understrap, which is an old school version of it. It's got like minimal things in there, but you can hang whatever you want on the board. I would like to see a situation where they take this and they turn a little to the left, and instead of putting all the color and the style variations in, it's just here's 3 or 4 different core layouts of the content area, the header, the footer, the sidebar. Here's some functional like padding and margin options. And then here's a couple other things like hide the title, hide whatever. They just need to look at Astra or look at Cadence or look at Blocksy or any of those to see what to do. If they did that and it was the default WordPress theme, we'd all be in a better place. And by the way, I stick by my guns. Ignore full site editing. If you do not, it's at your peril, because full site editing is gone off. I also want to make one comment that I think we can still throw into the show today. I was surprised you didn't reference Matt, and I know Brian had it in Twitter. Why didn't you reference this week Matt going off on the people on the homepage of WordPress, telling them that they're wasting their time trying to redesign the homepage of WordPress? They should just do it in HTML. The same people for whom they're volunteering their time to fix this goddamn block editor and full site editing and everything else are being told it's 30 hours of time is too much. Just mark it up in HTML.
Well, I keep off Twitter. You know, I've been
not only HTML, you can do it faster in Wix.
I mean, like that's the most.
It all makes sense to
ever.
me. It all makes, you know, he's not been on the Scotch bottle hard.
In fact, yeah. Daniel's here. Daniel almost had an aneurysm on this one, right? Because like
that's nice.
It's so tone deaf as to be not believed. Like Fearless Leader says, I've introduced all these things that none of you wanted, like full site editing, block editor, and okay, block editor's finally making progress. The homepage looks like it's from 1877. Can you hurry up and make it in some other tool other than the thing I told you we need to have WordPress do? Hello?
That was a perfect summary.
Volunteers.
Perfect summary of it right there.
Oh, okay. I mean, and by the way,
I don't know whether
I'm not paying you anything for this.
All right, fair enough.
No, he is paying that person.
So, Brian, first of all, what do you think of this particular story? And secondly, can you give some insight about, which wasn't on my radar because I've been keeping off Twitter to some extent. I will return. I have waves of wanting to be on Twitter, and then I kind of not go on Twitter. I kind of oscillate, Brian. So first of all, this story, and secondly, what the great leader's been up to.
Do you want me to comment on the theme too, or just?
Yeah, we'll start with the theme and then what the great leader's doing.
We'll do 2 topics at one time.
Yeah, why not? You're used to it. You're from Master WP, so you're used to it.
It's a double.
Yeah. So I sort of agree with Spencer on the default theme. I will say we do need that kind of like blank canvas full site editing theme because there isn't one, and it's cool that they're going to do it. But to me, it's also like another example of here's a full site editing theme that doesn't include things that you would want, like sidebars or design or a footer or any of the other important things on a website, but it does include things that don't work, like an email call to action, which if you have a vanilla WordPress website, that's going to be a block that literally does nothing because you can't have an email call to action on a vanilla WordPress site without a plugin or something like that. So it's this idea of like, we're showing you it's possible, but using things that don't actually work and not including all the things that you need. And it just seems like we keep seeing this happen over and over. And, but you know, if they do pull it off right, then we do need that, that canvas full site editing blank block theme, which I agree with Spencer. This might not be it, but maybe it'll get there. Jumping to, you know, Fearless Leader's comments, you know, my perspective is it feels like Matt Mullenweg works at Tumblr, and once a month he shows up somewhere in WordPress and kind of yells at a random person about something that person maybe doesn't really have any control or responsibility over, and then a bunch of people get mad at him, and then he leaves and disappears. And you know, I think it's happened once every month, and in 1 month some of us will be in San Diego for WordCamp, and I think let's see if he does it before then, because I just want to know what this keynote's going to be. I want to know what he's going to talk about. I want to know what happened in the last year of WordPress in terms of core software that he personally is going to talk about.
Well, I had a much nicer conversation with Joe Saffer yesterday. You know, sweetness and light, our chat. I'm not sure she totally
same.
I don't think she totally warmed to me. I think she got a bit warmer to my English sarcasm a little bit. She actually liked Andrew though. So Vito, what first, what do you think in general of this post, and any insights about the great leader?
So regarding the post, I think that we're kind of forgetting that the majority of WordPress users are not us, and that they're actually people that are just trying to get a website put together. So dropping them into a Canvas theme is the worst thing that you could do for an entry level person that comes into this space. It is the right thing for us, and no way that we would use a full featured theme as these Astra and Hello and Cadence and all of these kind of things are the right solution for a professional, but not for a starter. So I think that someone that wants to get something out there should have 3-4 options to choose from. Here's a few color schemes, and boom, you're live.
I think what you're saying is we need something that has the flexibility to fulfill what both.
No, I don't think so. I think that professional tools are done by the professionals for the professionals, and there are stuff out there that are already fulfilling these roles. As professionals, I think we should be paying for these solutions, and we shouldn't expect it to be like a default type of thing. But for the entry levels, the people that come in and want to spin up a WordPress site, that should be that default theme should serve them, because they don't know that you can change a theme. I think for us it's like it's the one of the first things that you do is you scrape the default theme, and you use whatever you prefer as your professional tool of choice. And that's not going to change every year, even though it has been over the past 3 to 4 years with all of the shifts in the space. Usually your preferred tool stack stays with you for 3-4 years or so. I'm cool with what they're doing. I think that's thing, and I kind of like the fact that there's a new fresh theme comes out in WordPress every year, even though I never used it in my life.
That's true.
And so
on to the great
other side.
Yeah,
for the other part. Sorry. Yes, go on, Spence.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just on that point, I think you bring up a good idea, though. If they had a Canvas theme, every year they could have a new sheet or style or something that applies onto the canvas.
Yeah.
So because the problem legitimately with all the themes to date, and the problem with where they're going with this 500 full site editings, it's chaos for any of the other functionality you have there. For example, on the 2022 theme, it breaks WooCommerce's core functionality because, for example, they didn't contemplate the footer is going to bleed up into the checkout area. And if you move and you're a rookie, if you move from 2019 to 2021 to 2022, every time you put in one of the new default themes, all hell breaks loose. If they had a canvas for the structure and the things were aesthetic only, like any, and it's so, to me, I'm not trying to belabor the point, but it's so already proven in the ecosystem that exists. Why aren't they just adapting it? Because it could still take full, the Gutenberg blocks. So, sorry.
So on to story 2, Vito. Any comment about the great leader?
So kind of, it was funny that it happens once a month. Comment that Brian was saying here. It is.
I blame Brian totally for all this thing.
I think it's sad, really, that this is what we came down to. That every time there's a full moon, the guy comes out and starts spewing something, and steers the pot.
Werewolf Matt appears.
Yeah. And to be honest, and you guys know me for a long time. I don't usually get too excited about these things or too upset about these things. But come on, it's just happening way too many times, way too often, by this one guy that who the hell cares, So like, fine, this guy started the thing, but I'm gonna say something that I don't think I ever said before. I think it's time to move on, from Matt completely, and just have some kind of a different structure or organization that is gonna lead WordPress from a positive and constructive point of view that doesn't want to pick battles, and doesn't kind of. I even feel that maybe over time he was kind of sheltered in a way that happens to a lot of people. It happens a lot in the entertainment business, in the music world, and things like that, when people are kind of living in these golden cages that nothing touches them, no one says no to you too many times, and then you feel that you can say and do anything that you want because there's no consequences. And then you get presidents telling you that they can shoot someone in the street and nothing's going to happen. So the whole thing, I think, was
But
great.
he was
at the
right.
beginning.
But the guy was right. He could shoot anybody.
And Matt is right as
nothing
well.
would
Nothing's
happen
gonna
to him.
happen. He can keep doing this every month, and we're just gonna keep talking about this. And it's just annoying. Why would you do that? So I think.
I know he was on the Scotch late at night. You knock back a few of the whiskeys and you get onto Twitter. Don't
I don't
you?
know. I don't know if that's the case, but whatever is the reason, nothing justifies this kind of demeaning behavior towards your own employee.
That was the bit I loved.
That was just ridiculous, and it just really,
It's
I'm
worse than
a pretty
working.
calm person, but this was just like again, and it hasn't been a month since the last debacle, so come on, let's just move on from this guy and create something that will work for us.
Yeah, there we go. So, John, what do you reckon, John? Which one do you want to start off with, the theme or just?
No, I don't really have whatever. But yeah, to recap for those who are unaware, in the WordPress Makes
It sounds
channel,
like you've got a bomb ticking. Sorry, I'm sorry, John, but it sounded like Doomsday was gonna. So I'm gonna let John sort out. Oh right, sorry, John. I'm going to let John sort out his microphone problems, and we're going to go on to story 2. I just think it's the whiskey. All I can say, Brian, is the worst balls ups that I've ever done. Whiskey and Twitter have always been part of it.
It's
Brian.
just objectively. Vito wasn't here last week, but I said the same thing. Everybody has said the same thing. It's not our particular business to vote anybody out, but you just can't have the dichotomy that is now obvious. He is a person of great skill and talent. He got us in many ways where we are today, but he has pretended for so often to be this impervious character with like the temperament of Midas or whatever, like he can just sit there and everything's cool. But then he has these moments where he drops the shields and shows that he's a real human being. But the problem is the project is a public project. It's a .org project. There needs to be somebody who's participatory in the trenches with the rest of the humans in the .org project, not somebody who's in the .com project funded by VCs who's off doing Tumblr and doing all these other things. It would be a great service and I think a great showing of his intelligence to back away from the .org project and allow somebody else to take the space, because unlike other Silicon Valley leaders, we've seen those who their personality in public matches their personality in private, like a Larry Ellison. Nobody claims Larry Ellison.
I disagree. I think you're all boring.
Hold on. I'm not.
I think you're all boring farts.
The point is
really.
that you can't have a situation where a debacle, I love the choice of words, Vito, keeps happening, because then it just distracts everybody into the drama of the Twitter sphere or the master WP sphere or whatever. And quite frankly, I'm kind of done with it. I think that many of us would rather just be like, let's just pretend Matt doesn't exist and do our own.
So basically you
get on with it already.
So basically,
but you can't. But you really can't, because what do you think is going to happen to this homepage now?
Well, that's the problem. Like, I was thinking about, do we fork it? Do we get everybody to just say, move everything over and call it Palabra Press or something and just move on with it. But it's too difficult. It'd be far easier for us to all put the pressure and say in public
I think
what we really,
I see
what we really feel.
I see
you know?
light. I see light there. You know, I had a very business
And I think, you know, like if he
I've got-
wants to
can I-
contribute to the community and to do the work with like everyone else, that's fine. But come on, as I don't think that there should be a leader. This is a democratized software. There should be a committee that is running.
Oh
this
my
thing.
God! God
And
save us
that
from
should be
that.
the, yeah.
God save us from that. Oh,
That's
my God.
gonna be much better. Should be a
Oh,
board
that
is
is
running,
board,
running
yeah.
the show. Yeah.
That is the death knell. You know, have it
I don't
run by-
think, Jonathan, you have any basis for saying that, because there's plenty of public
my
there's
God.
plenty of public good organizations that are run where the people are elected into position, they're voted into position, they volunteer. But the thing is, you can't have it both. Hold on, Jonathan. You can't have it both
I'm
ways.
giving you tons of airspace.
But I'm saying, just let me get the sentence out. You can't have
Well,
it both ways.
You got so many bloody sentences.
But
That's
you
why.
bring up something that's controversial, then you don't want to have any comment back on it. So I'm saying, if you're going to have a public position where it's a .org in parallel with a .com that's clearly funded by private interests,
Right.
the hypocrisy of that is transparent for everybody to see today. So it's
Now
easier
imagine
to
that
just-
you had like a cancer research charity run by a pharmaceutical company. you know?
Exactly.
It's
right.
not one or the other. All you need is a head person.
Where's Stephanie? We need Stephanie to instill some order into this discussion.
I'm running it. It's quite easy. We just utilize the normal methods, and that's an elected individual. He either is elected by a under committee or elected by elements of the WordPress community, and that individual has 4, 6, whatever period of time, and he has a board underneath that supervises to some extent only if that individual does something that's gross. And you just utilize the normal democratic controlling elements that have worked for hundreds of years.
That's what we just said 5 seconds ago that you said you didn't agree with. That's
No,
exactly what we just said.
you said that you wanted a committee to run it.
An elected, like any other
board.
organization, there's elected officials, there's boards, there's oversight, there's public ability to take people in and out. Just normal.
That's actually
democratic
a
system.
must for a UK charity at a fraction of the scale of WordPress. You know.
Yeah,
Of
just,
course.
but I've got every confidence with Josphia. I think she's up to it. I think things are going to change in the next few months. Actually, I think we're going to see some positive. I've got no inside scoop about it. I'm just going by my gut. I actually think so, John. Hopefully, you sorted out your ticking bomb problems. What's your thoughts?
I don't hear it.
Yeah, it's gone. Gone. You're a bit low. Your sound's a little bit low, but the ticking's gone.
It's a different microphone. But yeah.
Get
I
it
don't-
closer. Go
Put the
closer.
mic closer. You're too far away still.
Yeah, I got that. I had to change my microphone. You guys are telling me it was bad.
It's like a shark attack now.
Whatever.
Closer. You can't
Closer.
hear you.
All
Right.
here.
Well, you try and get it close and come back, John. I think we go. Brian's getting bored, and I think we go.
Well,
on.
I'll go one more thing on
Yeah,
that
go on.
topic, because part of me actually does feel like I would maybe be happier if they just took more control. If WordPress.com was like, you know what, we're going the ghost route and we own it, and we're just going to make decisions and not pretend like we're not, and just be transparent with that. But I would also love to see this year Matt do like a Tim Cook kind of move, where it's less I'm on stage and it's more, here's the 10 people that actually ran things over the last year, and give them the stage and let them talk about the things they've been working on. and just, take a step back and let some of these other people do it. Because it's clear he's not really engaged with WordPress, which is fine. He has other things to do. But, maybe in a month at WordCamp, take a step back, let some of these other team leaders, actually talk to the audience that wants to hear from them.
I don't see it's a zero option, Brian. I would like him to be honorary president, and he could be president for life as honorary president. He was a joint founder and he's contributed a lot, and I wouldn't want him to be totally divorced. So I think being honorary president of the WordPress project is honourable, and for him being CEO of Automatic and his other investments, but it just needs somebody full time, and Danielle is correct. That individual needs to be paid, and paid by WordPress.org, not be paid by Automatic. That is a terrible conflict of interest.
It needs to run like every other nonprofit in the world. You have a few people that are running the show, then you have a bunch of volunteers that are kind of contributing their time and their skills into it, and there's donations, and there's a few even built-in business models that drive forward the cause. Even let's say WordPress would have done like a Shopify marketplace type of thing, of plugins and themes inside the whole thing, and taken even 20%. I think a lot of people would have jumped on board straight away, and that would have financed the project.
There's
a marketing lead, maybe some kind of larger events, even.
Let us not forget last week, Jonathan, that last week we also were talking about WordCamp US, and subsequently this is being reinforced. There's two areas that fold into this about both the hypocrisy and the conflict of interest. Number one, WooCommerce, which is a major revenue generator, which was the source of Matt's last meltdown with GoDaddy, if you look behind the scenes, is coming out with this woo.com and et cetera, but they have had demonstrable strong-arm tactics to many other people in the ecosystem and reached out to other platforms to specifically quash people who are making open source solutions for WordPress.org that work with WooCommerce. Also got, with the WordCamp US, specific literal outreaches that tell people, you can't have parties that do this, you can't say things that do that, you can't advertise that says that, while not providing an ecosystem. And then you've also got a sort of squishy, but sort of on the same page, like, there's only certain sponsors that are invited to a private party or a private dinner. And when you combine all three of those with the fact that right next door to .org is .com, funded in private interest, it's such a ridiculously absurd conflict. It's not that dissimilar from our government's problem right now with pay for play in Congress and so forth. And it's like, we're all here. We have the control because it's open source. We're not literally without power or control. So I think it's a pressure of saying publicly, do we all want to make enough noise to tell Matt it's time? Because then we can move on. Because I agree with Vito's premise. It'd be very difficult to try to say we're going to take it and fork it and move it away. But we can all say we're just not going to work under these circumstances.
It just needs a bit of reorganization.
I mean, whatever. At the end of the day, we can all get on with it. But
Joe Saffer will have a chat with him. Joe Saffer will have a chat and they have a dinner together and share.
Think of all the time we've been wasting for years. Every 18 months,
calm down. We're on. I need to get this podcast moving. We just discussed this for a whole bloody first half.
One-stop shop for identity thieves is more relevant to a WordPress show. I mean, what's the big deal?
Yeah, that's what I was.
You can kill that.
You fork your own podcast if you think you can do better.
Listen,
I'm sure you do.
95 episodes.
You think you can do better on everything. So it's time to get.
Don't force me, man.
yeah, like hell. No wonder you're barred for WordPress US. We're going to go for our break. We will be back in a few moments, tribe. We're coming back. Brian is looking even more confused than the first time he
Not
joined
confused
it.
at all. Brian is one of the most
I've
coherent people
I've
on
only
this stage.
seen. Do you have to jump in consistently?
You need to go back to Twitter because Brian and Daniel and a couple of the people who are in the show today, there's really coherent conversation in Twitter about all this stuff. Like, you need to come back in there, Jonathan, because it's really
coherent discussion.
Yeah.
Coherent.
Yeah, that one got me. Coherent in Twitter.
Yeah,
I don't know. But
the two things are
the land of outrage is on Twitter. If you want to like waste a day,
You must be. What are you taking, Spencer? You know, Twitter and Insight. You must be joking. You gotta be absolutely joking, aren't you?
If you want to see where all of the outrage is about WordPress, it's where the outrage lives, which is in Twitter. I tend to not use Twitter because when I go in there for 5 seconds, I come out like my face is all red. But if you want to see what people are really saying, that's where they're free to say it, because that's what gets people riled up. The point is, this is not
me rattled up. I just don't.
Important. It's really relevant, isn't it? I mean, going into WordCamp US after 2 years, and all this nonsense is still happening. It seems like to me that's
but I don't expect a joyous acceptation of me being at WordCamp US. I run a podcast that pushes the envelope a bit. Some people are very, very easy to upset. So I just accept that, you know, I'm not going to get a totally warm reception. It is what it is. You on the other hand, expect to be loved, yet you're on the same. Yeah, that's
oh my
it.
God!
I don't expect.
Have you met me
loved.
after 15 years? I basically have a copy of Machiavelli's The Prince in my back pocket. I mean, you can't be in this space and not be yourself. I think people should be honest and consistent. And I've said again and again, I think most of us would appreciate if Matt would just act the way he does in private and public. Most of this stuff would go away because we'd all have a healthy dialect, like we were talking about last week with Heather, and we'd be honest about these things. Instead, it's this public persona, and what happens like in that example where he beats somebody with a stick in private and then it gets leaked out. That's what's wrong. I'm the same person in public and private. Anybody who's met me knows that. And I may not be loved by everybody.
Yeah, can we get on with this show? Can we get on?
Progress.
Look, can we get on with this show?
Yeah.
So on to Amazon.
You, by the way, are one of my most loved and hated friends, because you and I go at it every week. But you know, everybody knows this. We love each other because we're both crazy.
Yeah, sure.
Long pause there.
Amazon won't stop to identify thieves. So I've obviously it's not the greatest story, but it is August. But Brian, I thought it was interesting because it was like it opened a window. Do you think in general we're very blasé about the information we got available, and do you think we need to be a little bit more proactive about leaving stuff and what we put up? What's your own thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, the article was basically people theoretically can scrape your kid's baby registry Amazon wish list from 15 years ago and learn something about them. I think we just all have to live in the world where everything you do is always going to be online now, and everything you did, if you're a child now, your entire life is online, and every decision you made is online. And it's like we just have to prepare for that, because the idea that you're going to like stop putting these things on the internet is that ship has sailed, and we just kind of have to like think more about like in the world where everything we've done is available online somewhere, how do we navigate forward from that?
Is there like I'm going to be very cliche here, Brian, but I give no guarantees. But is there a possibility of something around blockchain? Is there some way of helping people have a little bit more easier routes to make their stuff more secure and restrict access to everything, or am I deluding you? You're just going to have to just accept that it's all out there.
I'm not an expert in that area, but I would say that like it seems like the whole point of blockchain is to make everything even more transparent and visible, and to make everything more public. So if your financial, history was on a blockchain, it would be by default something we could all examine, and that just seems to be more in the general direction of what I'm saying, which is all of your stuff is going to be on the internet, and just be prepared for that, and be prepared for what those consequences are going to be.
So Vito, what's your own thoughts? Do we just have to accept that any kind of privacy, if you and you're saying, well, you don't have to put it on the internet, but if you want to function as a human being in any kind of Western country, or any country really, you literally have to put everything in some database or online. So is Brian right? You just have to accept that there is no privacy anymore. It's just out there.
Yeah, I think that happened, like Brian is saying, that ship has sailed a long time ago. And maybe some people are starting to realize this now, but it's already been more than a decade that this has been the case. And I think it's fine, really. Some people are going to be kind of pushing back on this notion or this idea, and just like, don't take it away from me, but it was already taken. What can you do? That's the reality you live in.
Well,
it's not only online. If you go around in London, there's a camera in every street corner. And you have dash cams on every car that are scanning other cars around them based on the car, on the number, and they track and they kind of filter and match data of this guy cut me off, so the next person is gonna be warned off, and and the whole thing is gonna eventually end up in the hands of authorities. So it's just like a super connected world. And we just need to be good. I think that's the really core of it.
Well, I understand what you just say, but I don't. So Spence, because Pacific on the US, I don't think the legal establishment have kept, surprise, does there need to be in America much stronger legal framework about, because what Vito is outlined in the UK is truthful, but in America there's a lot of data that the police, which normally they would have to get judicial review, they would have to get a warrant to have access. There's a whole system of data which they can retrieve and utilize, where they don't have to get the court system involved. They can get at it from DNA to databases around number plate registration. It's all controlled by private companies, and the police force utilize it. Does all this need a bit more judicial involvement and new legislation to control it a bit more?
I think in this case, no, because the differentiator here is that this is a voluntary action to sign up for.
No, not this specific, but in general.
Well, I'd like to think that there was an opportunity at some point for this to change, but what we've seen as of late is that the ship has sailed on this, but we're really more in danger of things that are far more nefarious. So, for example, it would be a distraction to worry about all these laws and things that would be really unenforceable for who is a bad guy anyway, when what we really need to worry about are the things like the layer of AI that's about to go into place, where augmented reality becomes so seductive and then becomes exclusive. So, for example, right now, we could turn off a computer, walk around. It's not Minority Report, but very soon they're threatening us with, you're going to have glasses or goggles that show things about people and places that you're walking around in the real world. And that sounds so seductive that everybody's going to want to get it. Then all the marketers are going to go in there, and then there's going to be little avatars going, Spence, look, go over here, go over here. And then what's going to happen is, if you don't have the augmented reality, you're not going to see everything that everyone else is seeing, and you're going to be excluded from it. So, like, that's
He had
You
enough
broke
of
him.
you.
Welcome
You
back,
broke
folks,
us.
to episode 797. That's the nefarious outcome of all this, is that if we are talking about this kind of privacy, we get distracted from what they're bringing in the back door and setting up right now, which is really, it's early enough we can stop from happening.
But why do you want to stop the progress, really?
No, I don't want to stop the progress, but like, for example, with the augmented reality in Minority Report, which was a great movie, and it was years ago, 20 years ago, what happened is the people who ran the system were able to abuse it in their favor, not just for marketing, but they had these precogs that could predict when somebody on the streets was gonna commit a crime in the future, and then they would lock them up. And that's not that dissimilar from some of the things have had happening in our real world. Like, we've profiled you and we pulled you over and you're the wrong color or the wrong gender, or maybe you have a
That's
baby.
how remarketing ads work, really.
But I'm saying the same marketing tools like they're talking about in this registry. It's like, oh, you stopped taking your birth control pills, Sally, for 6 weeks. Maybe we should send some folks over to check up on you. Wink, wink, haha. And that's because you were using augmented reality or you were using one of these tools. So the danger is something that could be seductive is also abused by those who have, again, an oppressive reach on you, or a law enforcement or a political motive and so forth.
But I'm gonna argue this from the other side, because why is that bad?
It's not bad. It's not. It's like anything. It's not good or bad. It's that the same thing that's good for one person could be misused by another person.
Could be misused. I get that. Yes.
I mean, like any tool in society, like even medical benefits, like some of the best drugs in the world that helped solve pain or problems have been either abused or overpriced or anything because selfish people or greedy people or people with a bad motive,
All right, let's go on to story 3. New proposal calls for contributors to stop merging experimental APIs from Gutenberg into WordPress core. So, Brian, what did you think of this story? Seems pretty common sense to me, but there we go.
I think that Gutenberg as a whole has been run by developers, and letting developers run a project is like letting, inmates run the asylum. There's no one in charge. There's no managers or anything making decisions. Some of the features that come out are just mind-boggling. Matt Mullenweg shows up once a month to complain about how slow it's going, and he's not wrong. So one of these is one of those where you read it and you go, how is this even a conversation? How are we even at this conversation?
Let's have a committee. Let's have a little chat about it,
I just think
having a committee doesn't mean having people having these discussions that we're having. It's to avoid these discussions that we're having,
Yeah, nobody takes responsibility. 1 minute it's a volunteer, 1 minute it's not. It's, so this is what you see is they're just trying to do something very big and nobody's really in charge. I think there's 1 or 2 people that kind of are, but it's just, that's how I feel. I feel like you're in a place where there's something like 600 experimental APIs available. And the biggest problem is that if they didn't allow these experimental APIs into Gutenberg, we would have had no updates for the last year and a half, because the biggest problem is that people need to use these to actually accomplish things. And so that's their biggest, they can't just take them out. They have to actually finish them and get them supported.
Brian, isn't the brutal truth is that you wouldn't hire the great leader as a project manager?
Well, if he project managed, that would be great. I don't think anybody is project managing. I'd be happy to have him be more involved and project manage personally. I mean, it'd be better than nothing, I think. I can keep going.
Yeah, right, fair enough. That's an endorsement, isn't it? Better than nothing. So that's what my last girlfriend said to me. So Vito, what do you reckon?
I agree. I agree with what Ryan is saying. There is a project manager is a very specific and important role of executing any project, and I think that as an industry as a whole, the concept of project management kind of eludes us. This is something that You know, even I see that a lot with our users, with agencies and freelancers, that we're all coming from the creative point of view, whether it's on the code or on the design. This is creative processes. And while the project manager is an admin, is an administrator, he just makes sure that things happen within time and within budget and are moving in the direction of the bigger picture and the bigger vision in the right way. And so there is very little discussions or even understandings of core project management principles in the entire industry, and that seeps into the project here as well. These decisions I get it that now there's no way of going back on it, and that's fine. You know, whatever is done, but really is what is gonna happen next, because more of these decisions are gonna be done by not making a decision, really. And I think that's what we should be tackled. And I also agree that if Matt or anyone would step up as a dedicated project manager, or like head of Gutenberg, how amazing would that be? How fast things would move if there would be one guy that or one person that is their full-time job, to wake up in the morning and think what's going to happen this week, what is the sprint, what is being executed today, who am I doing a roundup or a stand-up meeting this morning, and who am I getting a progress report from at the end of today, so that we can actually move these things. These are all so basic project management activities that just don't happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I sense a change in you, Vito. You seem up for it. You're normally mellow, but maybe you've taken some coffee. Uncle Spence, what do you reckon about this one?
Me, I can only relate to having worked as a developer on a small scale or working with small teams, that it's very challenging to make decisions about what to do and how to do it with one or two or three people. No way, no how can you have 600 different contributors or 280 APIs and not have a ringmaster directing all the animals around the circus. It's just silly. It's just ridiculous to even be having this conversation. And with the speed at which everything is being asked to move forward, it's like literally like, I don't know, I'm taking one of my kids to college next week. It's like, oh, we're going to take you to college. Let's just improvise today. I mean, you don't really do it that way. You have to plan methodically a lot of things, because the decisions today lead to consequences tomorrow, especially with competing plugins or APIs or things that can collide. And then the politics come in. A bunch of unpaid, unhappy, argumentative people with no leadership. It's like a recipe for disaster. I don't know why it's even a debate, nor do I think it is a debate with most people. I think it's a debate. We all agree it needs to be fixed, and the people who can make that decision won't pay for it, won't do it, won't get out of the way. Sorry.
What is the problem to allocate like $500,000 a year to hiring 5 people that will lead the project?
Like a real company that actually is competing for $1 trillion marketplace. What a surprise that some people should be paid maybe 6 figures to act like a normal job in 2022.
I don't even know why this is controversial, why this stirs up a few people. I have no idea why this crowd.
The problem in the world in the past has always been solved in the past when people were not afraid to speak up for what makes sense. And I think the one thing this show does, as stupid and silly as we sound sometimes, is it's the no holds bar, tell it like it is, Emperor's New Clothes thing. And Master WP does that admirably well as well. And I'm suggesting that if enough of us would just say this, when we converge at whatever, San Diego or whatever, somebody is going to finally have to look in the mirror themselves and answer, well, I don't have a good answer for this, but now I agree it's time to move on. Because nobody wants to punish anybody. We want to just move forward. And this example is a great thing. Like 280 competing experimental APIs means there's a lot of people wanting to do cool stuff but nobody can fly an airplane if there's no cockpit filled with one pilot to make the choice.
The problem, I love the WordPress community. I've made a reasonably good living over the past 10 plus years out of it. It's been really good to me, and it's not.
We're all talking out of love, not out of
no, we are, aren't we?
Right. Nobody's like burn it down.
I had a couple pricks have a go at me on Twitter yesterday saying I'm anti WordPress and I'm anti Automatic. And I thought, well, give me a break because we got old face return.
Thank God, Voice of Reason has appeared.
Yeah, the Voice of Reason. John is trying to rejoin, but he's having mic problems. Tribe. But I had a couple of people tick a pot at me on Twitter yesterday. And I thought, because I'm supposedly anti-Automatic because I've said a few things on the show. I'm not actually. I actually am really puzzled why they can't get to grips with stuff. It's not jet science. It just needs
leadership.
Leadership
and money. But we had a great interview with Giuseppe yesterday.
We did, or you did. I think she warmed to you. I'm not sure she was warm.
I'm not surprised, really. I'm the nicest guy I know. So, the point. Hi, Brian. How you doing? So the point is that we're all making it and we're all running around. Vito nailed it. We need $500,000 a year in there to pay 5, 6, 4 project managers that get control of the situation. We've got to stop doing these silly things like how many was it, Spence? 261 separate API experiments going on. We've got all sorts of block experiments going on. We've got people building full site editing. We've got people deciding what full site editing is going to be called. You say that WordPress.org or WordPress the project should be run by committee. It is already, because it's supposedly the users. So a question goes out and says, what do we call for full site editing? Do we call it a theme? Do we do this? Do we do what? And all the contributors are actually the committee. So what we've actually got to do is form a board, make it a formal board of all paid members, wherever they get the money from, I don't care, because obviously WordPress can generate some cash, and just sort it out and run it like a business. There's no doubt about it, because if this continues with Matt having built-in public conversations with people and effectively telling them off and effectively stamping his foot saying, I did not approve this, then WordPress will go the way of Joomla. People will just lose their enthusiasm for it.
And you bring up one big point. The difference in a private corporation, let's take Larry Ellison or somebody who's controversially, do it this way. He's paying everybody. So he has the right to veto things. Matt is paying no one. And yet in this case, I think the solution for where the money comes from is obvious. There's infinite amounts of money from private companies who would pay. We talked about it, like, I'm sponsoring this project, I'm sponsoring that project, I'm sponsoring whatever, because it's in my company's interest to see it move forward so we can sell more software. So the only person in this mix who's in the way is Matt. Because
he does pay these people. Most of these people, like the person that is his employee. And yeah, there is like the nonprofit, but that was his direct employee that he, had that conversation
that's
with.
Part of the problem, because there is the relationship of they're both volunteers on this project, but he's the kind of his employer on another project that they both work on. But what Spence is talking about is allocating funds per project, and then the people don't have risk of losing their job because they build a homepage that their boss didn't like.
You're totally right. But Andrew, wasn't the total contradiction of that interview yesterday with Josepha is that it came out of her own mouth? I am responsible for WordPress.org, not Automatic. But I'm paid by Automatic.
Yeah, and we
That
we,
is
we
not
she
that
kindly
is,
allowed
that
us-
is not sustainable.
No, she kindly allowed us to explore that as well. It is a contradiction in terms, so we know that, everybody knows that. But where would the money come from otherwise, other than Automatic, to have a director of WordPress, a director of Gutenberg, a director of APIs, a director of whatever? Where would that money come from? So what happens? I think this is what Matt said yesterday, and what he's been saying of late. I think this is a precursor for WordPress to go commercial. It will no longer be a volunteer-run project. It will go commercial. I don't know when. I just have this gut feeling that there's a lack of control, yet people within WordPress want control, and they're just going to take it. So one day, the board of Automatic will say to Matt, "We own WordPress. We own all of WordPress."
They can't, because my understanding is the structure of Automatic is, my understanding, I have no real, but I've been told the structure of Automatic, its share allocation, that Matt has super shares and he is in total control.
I get that. But even when somebody is in total control and they've got super shares, even me as the majority shareholder of my company, if my board members said to me, "This has got to stop," then I am obliged by duty of care of the business to actually do what they ask. It's simple as that.
Consider it, at least consider it with
least, yeah.
with intent. Yeah.
It could just be forked. The one difference as well is in a normal corporation, the assets of the corporation are protected by copyright and otherwise. Here, the main asset is open source software. So though it's unlikely, it is possible there could be a mutiny and everybody could simply say, we're essentially just going to change the name to something else, and everybody's going to the other thing. Again, unlikely, but if that public debacle, thank you for the word veto, came up, nobody, including Matt, would suffer the publicity problems of looking that foolish. Like everybody said, the problem is you, and you're still sticking around, because he has no financial interest in that. His financial interest comes from his shareholding and the .com side of things, technically not from the .org.
Yeah, but in a strange way, in a strange way, panel, I'm very optimistic, because based on yesterday's interview, because I sense, and I might be totally wrong here, it's just my opinion, that I do sense that they do know that things have to change a little bit. And I think Automatic got WordPress.com, and he could be president of WordPress.org for life. And we just need a board and a CEO, and we just need a bit of cleansing and role clearing who has responsibility with what, and things we could avoid the Joomla situation quite easily. It just needs a bit of goodwill and a bit of acceptance that things need a bit of changing.
I agree with you, John. I think we have to press the reset button. And I just want to acknowledge Peter Ingersoll there, because I saw the tweets there and talking about the tweets that were directed at you. And he's right. You know, the interview was a great interview. It was delightful to have Josefa on WP-Tonic, because Peter's not wrong in that this podcast has been very, very critical of Automatic. So really, very.
I've only been critical. I just want to say I've just been critical on two key matters. I am critical when an individual of the stature of Matt says that he is happy to be seen as a benevolent dictator. I have a problem when somebody comes out with a statement like that. And secondly, my criticisms have been around the frustration around the Gutenberg project. And I think everybody on this panel would agree it's not been a fantastic experience. And that's just the reality.
I'm not saying it's just you. I'm not saying it's just you, Jonathan. All of us have criticised Automatic at some stage in time in this podcast, which is fair enough. We are human beings. We've got a right to be critical, but we also, hopefully, tell the positive side. You know, Automatic and WordPress and Mike Little and
well, you saw the positive. You were there. You saw the positive in Porto.
One of the things that really annoys me is that people put founder of WordPress by Matt Mullenweg's name. He's not the founder of WordPress. He is the co-founder, and that is a very important aspect to me. You know, like Vito's co-founder of Bertha. If I came out and said I'm the founder of Bertha, he's a nice guy. He probably wouldn't piss him off too much, but it's wrong. It's not the right thing. People have got to realize that Mike Little had massive influence. In fact, he started it and invited Matt into it. And then, you know, a couple of years later, Matt starts Automatic. So we've got to be clear about where we started, where it was going, where we are now, and what direction we want as users and contributors to WordPress, where we want it to go. And if we don't want Matt to be the benevolent dictator of WordPress project anymore, we've got to tell him that every opportunity we see. He's very approachable. He will come on podcasts. He will meet you at WordCamps. And if you go up to him and be brave and say, Matt, I don't think you should be running the WordPress project anymore. I think you should have someone else. Because he's not. You know, it was very clear in that interview yesterday with Josefa that she is the captain of the ship. She's the director of WordPress. Simple. And I think that is a great decision because she's a very affable, intelligent, lucid, human
Andrew,
being.
don't you feel that, and that's great that there is a director of WordPress, that there is one first, you know. Don't you think that her salary should come from .org?
I do 100%. And I said as much as well. I said it's
such a huge conflict of interest.
Yeah,
it's implied any other place.
Yeah, you can't have that. So that's got to change. And I think that at the end of the day, the powers that be will acknowledge that. And it's very important for us as users and for the millions of people that use WordPress to know that there is
legal. You know, I'll go as far as saying this. I don't think it's legal. You know, and I'm not maybe you can shed a light on this, Spence, because you have
well, it's messed. I wouldn't say. I don't know.
That a commercial company is running a non-profit organization that they are benefiting from directly.
So, Brian,
it's not a legality issue, but I will say this about Josefa.
But their job title is the head of a non-profit, and she's being paid directly from a company that profits from the non-profit.
The issue that you're framing is, in my view, like this. First of all, I can't think of a better person than Josefa to be.
I don't mind the person. I don't know about. I'm not talking about the person.
I know, but I just want to frame it in terms of like, what's the reason why nobody's done anything about it? She herself seems to have the frame of mind, the reference, the personality to be the real leader.
Yes.
She keeps getting audited by, you know, the grandmaster when he doesn't like things, and I don't feel. This is my opinion only, based upon all my inside and outside facts. I don't feel she's vested with full authority or autonomy. Right. Okay.
So this is, I think I just want.
I'd like to hear the legality of it.
I just want Brian. So Brian, I think Spencer's spot on with his observation, Brian. I think you've got, with Josefa, you've got somebody that's really very impressive, but she's dealing with a joint founder, a very charismatic individual. And I just feel that she's been put in a very difficult space, really. What do you feel?
I've only talked to her a little bit, and I basically said exactly what Spencer said, which is, I think there's the impression that she understands and gets things, and that her decision-making is a consequence of her employment. And I think people from the outside sort of understand that, and we sympathize. But the one thing I will say about all of that is, at this point, separating the financial and there's only one real big problem in WordPress, is that not enough people are contributing and the project is getting stagnant. And many of us are expecting this full site editing change to take probably another 3 years before we see a single new feature land in WordPress. And that's the biggest problem. That's the only problem, that it's if the project was moving forward at a nice pace, I think we'd all care a little bit less. We'd be happy. And it's not. And every team says their biggest problem is no one's contributing. And the fact that the only way to help WordPress is to pay somebody to go jump into the mud and deal with that problem is just not feasible. And it's hard to pay people to even want to do that. Most people don't want to do it. So the idea of separating that and finding a way where we could move the finance and the governance of WordPress to someone other than Matt and give people an opportunity to donate financially in a way that they feel very comfortable and they feel like is an ethical place to put their money, it would be vastly easier to get 5% from a lot of people, 5% financially than 5% of your employees' time, which is much less meaningful, and see some progress. But until we see that separation of here's the governance of the open source and that's controlling the development and we're all paying in the same place and we can see the work moving forward and we know who's in charge and we can vote them out because we're funding it. Until that happens, the bleed of contributors is going to continue and the project will stagnate. And that's the only problem I care about. Whether Matt runs it or not is less important to me than the fact that WordPress is becoming less and less a viable platform to build websites on from the agency perspective.
Do you think, Brian, that the bleed of people wanting to contribute or not wanting to contribute is because of the direction of FSE and Gutenberg? Do you think that they don't want to contribute because they don't actually want to work on it because they don't feel it's worth it?
Well, I think that's one place, but there's contributing is so many things. I mean, the learn team, the translation team, the, accessibility team. If you talk to anybody on any of those teams, they'll tell you one thing: they just need more people. Every single one of those. And accessibility is just as important. Translations are just as important. All those things are important. So, is it people don't want to literally write the code for Gutenberg? That's probably part of it. But because I've been trying to contribute to a feature project, but deep down, it's like, is this feature project going to get included into core? I don't know. I got to work on it for 5 years and then see what Matt says about it. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to contribute to that. And so, I can't say that there's one reason that there's a struggle to get contributors, but I think, there's definitely a opportunity for letting people contribute financially to a separate, non-automatic owned place.
So thanks for that, Brian. So just to finish off panel, I put this question to you, panel. Do you think that Matt has the insight to know that there's a need for some fundamental changes here? Otherwise, this project, the outcomes don't look too rosy. But on the other hand, with some goodwill and some insight for him. So let's start with Andrew. Do you think that the great leader has enough insight and there's enough people prepared to say something to him for some of the changes that we've discussed to actually happen? You're muted.
I think it would be obvious that he's aware of the dissent in the ranks, if you like. But at the end of the day, he is the co-founder. And it's very difficult to let go of something that you built and directed for years now, 19 years, quite successfully, 40% of the web, whatever. So, is it a question of dead men's shoes? Who's going to replace him should he get run over by a bus or a taxi or whatever? So I don't think he will give up the realm or the reins easily. But if he doesn't, I think that he will run out of leadership quality. The quality of his leadership will go down, I think, which has been demonstrated by the GoDaddy tweet and by the tweets that he did yesterday. I felt that he was being quite disrespectful to the person that he was talking to, because that's
there's a total imbalance of
it's a leadership fail. It's a leadership fail, and yeah, we can all build in public, but we don't need to criticize in public.
Yeah, but we're doing now. There was a by the sounds of it, a total disparity in power dynamics when you're the founder and you're in public belittling an employee. It's all right to do it in private, maybe, but when you do it, there's such a power dynamic, a disparity in power, that it's quasi
I don't think
abusive.
it's power. I think it's authority. I mean, he is the authority on WordPress, right? He makes the decisions. Now, I've been a witness to management telling somebody off or even sacking somebody in public within the organization. So within the brick and mortar building, you know, one of my joint managing directors of my printing company went straight up to a print minder and sacked him on the spot. That's not the way that you do things. You know, you take people off into a private room and say you're fired. You know, and because but maybe that's the mentality behind it. When I said to the fellow director, "Why did you do that?" He said, "I want people to be aware that nobody is indispensable." Maybe that was Matt's agenda yesterday, to make sure that, you know, whatever you do,
asserting dominance.
Yes, just asserting his authority. It's not about power; it's about authority. Very subtle differences between power and authority. You can be powerful without any authority, you know. But he was just asserting his place in the hierarchy. I think yesterday that was the key.
So, Spencer, what do you reckon? Do you reckon there's enough insight to see? Yeah, because I think one of the great leadership always has an expiry date to it. You know, one of the great insights is to know when it's time to sell a company, when it's time to move on. Everything has an expiry date, you know, to some extent, you know, and if you're not aware of that, you're kidding yourself. What do you reckon?
To answer that question that was hanging out there, there's not a legal problem with Matt's disparity between auditing somebody who is being paid by the .com. The only time it'd be an issue would be if there was something that violated the trust or the purpose for the 501c3 or the other things about it. And I don't think that would work out anyway, because the benefit to the people who, you know, work in the ecosystem, it's too great compared to the loss if they close the charitable or the nonprofit status. So the legalities of that aren't as important as the politics. And the politics are really, I think we're all in agreement here. To my taking a piece of Brian's statement, I could give two shits about whether Matt calls himself the king of the world or not. All I care about is that we've been in this bus for 16 years. It's got a flat tire on the side of the road now for 3+ years. And he's sitting in the front seat while everybody in the back's trying to figure out, like, you know, let's fix the bus. Let's call a tow truck. Let's do something. And every time there's a good answer, somebody brings up, he's like, shut up. And worse, he's like got a limo sitting next door of all his money providers, like with girls and drinks and guys and party and everything's happening. And he's a multimillionaire billionaire while the rest of us are like, why don't you throw a couple coins towards a tow truck or something?
Yeah.
Because if you're not, call your rich friends and have them come over, and they can benefit directly and financially through just taking charge of a project. So people can start getting paid, because the rest of us who make our livelihood would have a much better time convincing our clients of why to stick around WordPress instead of the shit show of drama that we keep seeing that you don't see in other companies. You don't ever see Oracle having, like, every couple months, like, Larry Ellison did this, or even, you know, Mark Benioff did this.
Benny, but the Oracle's still probably not the best example.
Because of something like financially progressive. You don't see it like, you know, they're acting like.
So, Brian, I think Spencer's got another good observation. Is it possible to? It's never going to be totally achievable because it's an open source project, and that comes with a certain level of drama. But is it possible to steer WordPress more like Salesforce with Benny? Because you wouldn't see Benny making these statements on Twitter, would you? You know, the guy's a machine. You know, you just wouldn't see it, would you, Brian? Would you?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on that one. Sometimes I feel like we want it run like a better private company, and we want it run like a better nonprofit. And there's going to be some give and take on those two different things. And we can't have both of those happen at the same time. Personally, I really don't care where we draw the line between these two things. I just want to see some forward progress on this thing. I think, until people feel like they are back into being listened and have some ownership over what's happening, they're not going to want to be a part of it. And that's just the way things work. And when people aren't heard, they're just going to find better solutions. And we're all going to build, websites with Laravel because it's, no one's yelling at you on Twitter for it.
I think that's a great statement. I think we had some other stories, but I don't want this podcast to go on forever. I think it's a great place to stop. I think with a bit of goodwill and a bit of common sense, all of this can be improved and the project can go forward. It's just that there needs to be honest discussion, and then some decisions need to be made, and it's all fixable. And it's just a shame that but I was optimistic with the conversation yesterday. I do sense that there is leadership in WordPress that is aware that some of these things do. Before we end it, we do need our recommendations. Mine is site Origin Css. It's a plugin. I saw it on the TUT YouTube channel being a review, and it seems a really amazing solution if you want to fine-tune your CSS of a theme. It's really from a great plugin shop as well. So that's my recommendation. So Spencer, have you got a recommendation?
My voice, sorry. WP Featherlite is a free plugin that's jQuery Lightbox. Super, super, super lightweight. It does one thing really well. If you have stuff like I'm doing documentation for LaunchKit. If you have images that you want, instead of opening the media into another window or the same tab, you want to just do a lightbox. That's all it does. So it allows you essentially to make anything that's like going to open in another tab, open in a modal, which for this purpose was really terrific. So again, if you're looking for something that loads just a couple kilobits of data and it does it specifically, good choice.
Great. Put that in Slack, will you? Brian, have you got a recommendation to the tribe?
Yeah, I've been playing with a plugin called, now it's blank, it's Accessibility Checker by Amber Hines and Equalize Digital. But it's basically like when you're writing a blog post and if you have Yoast installed and it's telling you your SEO scores and how good you are, it's basically another one of those, but for accessibility and just pointing out if you have any issues in your blog post content or something like that. And so it has a good free plan. It just runs and you can just kind of like train clients to kind of keep an eye on it when they're writing articles. And then I think there's maybe a premium version that also like does scans and stuff like that. But we've been kind of testing that out and it's a pretty cool idea.
Vito, you got a recommendation?
Yes, I'd like to recommend Main WP, which is a platform that allows you to manage a bunch of different websites from one centralized location. And we just released a collaboration with them and integration with them earlier this week that has all kinds of really cool stuff in there. And through this integration, it allowed me to really dive in deeper to what they're offering. And I think it's a really awesome solution. And they've built something pretty amazing over the years. So that would be my recommendation this week.
Got anything you want to recommend, Andrew?
Yes, we've got to be conscious of the need to work from home. I basically wrote a blog post on thisisandrewpalmer.com on work from home and remote working and all things like that. And one of the things that I've been doing with a couple of clients recently is just doing a bit of co-working with the clients, not necessarily talking to them all the time, but just being in a virtual room with them. And I use orbital.chat for that. And Orbital are now experimenting with video as well, rather than just audio. But you've got whiteboards, you've got tables that you can go to, and it's just a really nice little system. And it's not expensive, and it stops you being quite so lonely when you're working on your own. So it's good for you, good for your mental health as well.
I'll put that into Slack. So I got it. So panel, been a great discussion. It's been a great show. We'll see you next week, Tribe, with another honest discussion about WordPress and tech. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.